The CEO's husband suddenly took an unusual interest in me, bringing me an elaborate breakfast. But since I was suffering from terrible morning sickness, I gave it to his personal secretary. An hour later, a blood-curdling scream tore through the office. I ran to see what was happening and froze in my tracks. That morning, I had arrived at the office early, as usual. The morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the thick binders of reports on my mahogany desk. I had barely sat down with the intention of reviewing some balance sheets when the door to my office swung open. Travante walked in carrying a pale blue thermal food container, a high-end model I had never seen in our kitchen. Most surprising of all was the radiant smile he wore, a warm and strangely familiar smile I hadn't seen in a long time. He placed the thermal container on my desk with a gentle thud. "Good morning, baby. Happy 3rd anniversary. I wanted to do something special for you." I looked at him, stunned, and then lowered my gaze to the container. Travante, the man who was always busy with endless meetings and constant business trips, had cooked breakfast for his wife himself today. He unscrewed the lid of the container while explaining tenderly, "Lately, I've noticed you looking pale, and I know work is stressing you out. I got up way before dawn this morning to slow cook some chitterlings for you, your favorite soul food, to help you get your strength back. Eat them while they're hot." A dense steam rose, impregnating the air with that unmistakable, pungent aroma of chitlins stewed with spices and peppers. If I had been the Zendaya of 6 months ago, I probably would have been moved to tears by this unusual gesture of attention. But ironically, in that moment, that smell became my worst nightmare. I was secretly 3 months pregnant, and morning sickness was torturing me without mercy. Every time I smelled something strong or distinctively animal-like, my stomach twisted in spasms, and a wave of nausea rose up my throat. I held my breath, swallowed hard, and forced a smile. "Thank you, Travante. That's so thoughtful. But I actually just had toast at the house. I'm still stuffed." Travante seemed surprised for an instant. The smile froze on his lips before he quickly recovered his usual composure. He pushed the container toward me, insisting with patience. "Toast? That's nothing. Eat a little of this for energy. I spent the whole morning cleaning and cooking these. Don't do me like that." His words sounded soft, but they carried an invisible pressure. I looked into his eyes, searching for a glimmer of sincerity, but I only found a calculating expectation. Just when I was debating how to refuse without offending him, a knock on the door saved me. Kalisha, the new secretary hired 3 months ago, walked in with a stack of documents. She was wearing a tight pencil dress that accentuated her curves, and her face, carefully made up, radiated an air of seduction and ambition. She placed the documents on the desk, shot a flirtatious look at Travante, and then at the container of chitlins, saying in a honeyed voice, "Oh, look at the director being so thoughtful, bringing Zendaya something to build her strength up this early. You are so lucky, Zendaya. With a husband who's a perfect 10 like this, nobody can compete." Travante ignored her completely, looked at me to give a few final instructions, and left the office. In that moment, an idea struck me. I smiled and gently pushed the container toward her, my voice hiding a sarcasm that probably no one noticed at the time. "I just ate, and I'm absolutely full, and it would be a shame to waste Travante's effort. Kalisha, have you had breakfast? If not, you eat it for me. The chitlins Travante makes are delicious, and they're still steaming." Kalisha's eyes went wide with surprise, and then her expression shifted to one of jubilation, as if she had hit the lottery. She glanced at Travante's retreating figure, checking for objections. Seeing he didn't oppose it, though he remained silent with a slightly annoyed expression, she grabbed the container with enthusiasm. In a sugary tone, she said, "Well, if you insist. Thank you so much, Zendaya. I'll eat it all, won't leave a drop. I'm sure anything the boss cooks is a meal fit for the gods." I watched Kalisha leave my office hugging the container like it was a treasure, and I felt an immense relief at escaping the imminent heave. I tried to concentrate on work, turning the pages of financial reports, but the numbers danced before my eyes and my head spun. A sense of unease grew inside me, like the heavy, dark sky that precedes a storm. I poured myself a glass of lukewarm water and took small sips to calm the baby moving inside me. 3 years of waiting, and finally, heaven had taken pity on me, granting me this little life. I promised myself I would take care of my health and not let negative thoughts affect my child. About an hour later, while I was absorbed in typing, a loud thud was heard from the common work area, as if something heavy had fallen to the floor. Immediately after, a blood-curdling scream ripped through the silence of the entire floor. It wasn't a common scream of fear, but one loaded with extreme, sharp, and horrifying pain. My heart shrank. A bad feeling washed over me. I jumped up and ran out of my office. The scene I found left me frozen. Kalisha was writhing on the floor next to her desk. The container of chitlins was overturned, its contents scattered everywhere. The penetrating smell of the stew mixed with the stench of vomit, creating an unbearable funk. Kalisha was clutching her belly tightly. Her beautiful face was now disfigured by pain, pale and drained of blood. Her eyes were rolling back, and she was foaming at the mouth, while her body convulsed uncontrollably like a seizure. But what terrified me most was that the lower part of her beige dress was slowly staining a deep crimson. It was blood, fresh blood flowing freely, soaking into the office carpet. Employees were running back and forth, panic-stricken. Screams and calls to 911 filled the air. I stood there, hands and legs trembling, a lump in my throat. What on earth was happening? Why was Kalisha like this? It was the bowl of chitlins I had given her. The thought crossed my mind like a lightning bolt, sending a chill down my spine. At that precise moment, the door to the CEO's office slammed open. Travante ran out with a look of panic I had never seen on him. He didn't run to help his employee, nor did he ask what was wrong. He stopped dead a few feet away, eyes wide, fixed on the pool of blood on the floor. I clearly saw the expression on his face change from stupor to fear and finally to a demented rage. He snapped his head up and his gaze, sharp as a dagger, locked onto me. It wasn't the look of a husband worried about his wife seeing such a horrible scene, nor was it that of a boss pitying his employee. It was the look of a killer realizing his prey had narrowly escaped. He strode toward me and grabbed my arm with a force that made me cry out in pain. He hissed through his teeth, voice trembling with contained fury. "What did you do? Why? Why her?" That illogical and accusing question was like a bucket of ice water, snapping me back to reality. Why was he asking what I had done? Why was he so disappointed that the one lying on the floor was Kalisha and not me? I looked deeply into Travante's bloodshot eyes and felt a terrifying truth begin to reveal itself. I slapped his hand away, trying to maintain composure, and responded with an icy voice. "What did I do? I just gave her the bowl of food you cooked. What are you thinking, Travante? Were you expecting it to be me on the floor?" Travante froze, as if realizing he had said too much. He let go of my arm, took a step back, and wiped his hand over his face to hide his confusion and panic. The sound of ambulance sirens resonated from the street below, breaking the suffocating tension between us. The paramedics came up quickly, placed Kalisha on a stretcher, and whisked her away. Travante ran after them, but before entering the elevator, he turned to look at me with eyes that still distilled hatred and threat. He ordered me, "You have to come to the hospital too. This happened because of the stew you gave her. Don't try to dodge your responsibility." I watched the elevator doors close and swallowed my tears. The husband I once loved and trusted blindly had revealed himself to be a complete stranger, a calculating and evil man. That bowl of chitlins, if it hadn't been for the nausea, and if I hadn't given it to Kalisha, the person now lying in a pool of blood would be me, and my little baby would have shared my tragic fate. A cruel truth was beginning to take shape. Travante didn't want to take care of me. He wanted to kill our child, or maybe even me. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. I would go to the hospital, not out of fear of his threats, but to witness with my own eyes the true face of this man. Sitting in the cold plastic chair of the waiting room, I interlaced my hands tightly to stop the trembling coursing through my body. The fluorescent light overhead reflected on the tiled floor, creating a spooky sense of loneliness. Travante, the man with whom I had shared my life for 3 years, paced back and forth in front of the ER doors like a caged beast. He ran his hands through his hair, bit his nails, and occasionally shot me sideways glances, a mix of suspicion and hate, but didn't dare approach. Seeing his impeccable suit now wrinkled, I felt a deep bitterness. What was this man worried about? The life of his little mistress, or the fear that some dark secret would come to light? Finally, the ER doors opened, breaking the stifling silence. A middle-aged doctor walked out and removed his mask, revealing a serious and tired face. Travante lunged at him like an arrow, voice cracking with tension. "Doctor, how is she? Is it serious?" I stood up slowly and approached, trying to keep my breathing calm. The doctor looked at both of us, his gaze lingering on Travante a moment longer than normal before reporting slowly. The patient suffered acute poisoning. Luckily, she arrived in time and is out of danger. However, the cause of the severe hemorrhage was the ingestion of a large amount of misoprostol. The medical name made me frown, but for Travante, it seemed to be a devastating blow. His face lost all color. His lips moved without emitting a sound. The doctor continued explaining in a firmer tone. "It's a drug used to induce uterine contractions, either to facilitate labor or to induce an abortion. With the extremely high dose we found in her gastric contents, it is clear this is intentional poisoning, not simple food poisoning. Following protocol, we have informed the police." Barely had he finished speaking when 2 uniformed officers appeared at the end of the hallway. They approached seriously and asked us to cooperate with the investigation. At that moment, Travante seemed to snap back to reality. He hurriedly wiped beads of sweat from his forehead, attempting to regain the composure of the CEO he usually portrayed. He turned and pointed a finger at me, voice trembling but full of accusation. "Officers, you need to investigate this thoroughly. This morning I prepared a stew for my wife. She had the container in her office for a long time before giving it to Miss Calicia. I suspect my wife, out of unfounded jealousy, put something in it." I looked at Travante, feeling as if someone were squeezing my heart. He already had his alibi ready. If I had eaten the stew, I would have lost my child. Since someone else ate it, he would blame me for poisoning. I took a deep breath, looked straight at the older officer, and said calmly, "I have no motive to do something like that. You can check the hallway cameras, look for fingerprints on the medicine bottle if you find it. And most importantly, I would like to know why a stew my husband claims he prepared to take care of me contained an abortion drug and why it affected his secretary so severely." The officer nodded, taking notes, and then asked the doctor a question that left us both breathless. "Doctor, what is the specific condition of the victim? What consequences has the use of this drug had?" The doctor sighed, his voice turning grave and sorrowful. The patient, Calicia, was 6 weeks pregnant, due to the massive dose of the drug, which caused extremely violent uterine contractions. We regret to inform you that the fetus could not survive. The world around me seemed to freeze. I heard Travante let out a choked moan. His legs gave way, and he collapsed into the waiting room chair. His face was unhinged, eyes wide open, staring into the void. So that was it. That young, beautiful secretary was carrying his child, and he himself, with his evil plan destined for his own wife, had unknowingly ended the life of his illegitimate child, whose existence he probably wasn't even aware of. Seeing his pitiful state, I felt no satisfaction, only a wave of disgust rising in my throat. The love he had professed to me, or the passion he felt for his mistress, it all reduced to nothing in the face of his selfishness and cruelty. After receiving the shocking information from the doctor, the police officers decided to question Travante and me separately, right there in the hospital. I was invited to sit in a quieter corner of the hallway across from the older officer, whose gaze was sharp but serene. He looked at me without judgment, almost with compassion, and asked kindly, "Ma'am, Please relate in detail everything that happened from the moment you received the food container until the incident occurred. Try to be as precise as possible. Don't leave anything out, no matter how small it seems. I closed my eyes, rewinding the movie of that fateful morning. I told him how Travante had appeared suddenly with excessive attention, something that had completely disappeared from our marriage in the last 6 months. I told him about the intense smell of the chitlins that triggered my nausea. I explained that I only opened the lid, looked, and closed it immediately. I emphasized every word. From the moment he left the thermos on my desk until Miss Calicia entered, I didn't move from my chair, nor did I open the container again. It was always in sight and completely untouched. I gave it to Calicia simply because I couldn't eat it, and she seemed enthusiastic about the idea. On the other side of the hallway, Travante was being questioned by a younger officer. He insisted on the cleanliness of his cooking process. He claimed, "I went to the market myself, got in the kitchen, and prepped that stew from the crack of dawn. I'm a very meticulous person. I never let the housekeeper touch my wife's food. As soon as I finished, I put it in the thermos and brought it directly to the office without it passing through anyone's hands." Travante was convinced this statement would present him as an exemplary husband, while simultaneously pointing to me as the only suspect, the only person who had been in contact with the container in a closed room. But in his panic, he had forgotten something fundamental. The more he insisted he was the only one who prepared everything, the more he put the noose around his own neck if it was proven the poison was already in the stew from the beginning. When the questioning session paused, the older officer approached his colleague, who was taking notes on Travante's statement. They exchanged a few words in low voices, casting furtive and significant glances toward Travante. Noticing this, he became even more nervous. He jumped up, raising his voice more than usual to hide his fear. "Investigate thoroughly. My wife has been very jealous lately. She's not right in the head. Who knows? Maybe she slipped the poison in when I left the office." I listened to every one of his cruel words. How painful. The man I once loved was now trying by all means to put me in prison to save himself. I stood up, walked over to them, looked Travante directly in the face, and asked with surprising calm, "Travante, if you think it was me, what would be my motive? To kill your secretary? Or are you afraid they'll discover that stew wasn't for Calicia, but for me?" Travante started. His eyes darted nervously, avoiding my gaze. He stammered, "You? What nonsense are you talking about?" Time passed with agonizing slowness. Every minute of waiting for the lab results was mental torture. I remained seated in silence, hand resting gently on my belly, in an instinctive gesture to protect the little being caught in the eye of the hurricane. Finally, a forensic technician came out with the results in hand. He announced in a grave voice, "On the rim of the thermos and on the spoon, we found fingerprints belonging to Mrs. Zendaya and the victim, Calicia, which matches the statements. However, the crucial point is that the toxic substance was completely dissolved in the stew, impregnating every piece of meat and juice. This proves the drug was added during cooking or immediately after, while the stew was still very hot and stirred in well, not simply sprinkled on top once the container was closed." This conclusion was like a bucket of ice water for Travante, completely destroying the theory he had tried to construct to blame me. If I had added the drug upon receiving the thermos in the office, it wouldn't have dissolved so uniformly. Travante's face changed color, passing from pale white to an ashy gray. He started rambling, losing control. "No, it can't be. Surely it was Calicia who took the medicine. That's it. She was pregnant. She wanted an abortion and took the pill before eating. You have to investigate her. Don't accuse an innocent man." I looked at the pathetic scene of my husband, feeling a mix of laughter and pity. The man who was once my pride was now revealed as a coward, incapable of facing the consequences of his acts. I raised my voice, cutting off his ravings firmly. "Travante, stop kicking and screaming. If Calicia took the medicine on her own, why was it also in the stew? Are you going to say she took it and then vomited into the thermos? Does your explanation sound logical?" Travante spun around abruptly, eyes bloodshot. "Shut up! What do you know? You hate me. You want to destroy me, and that's why you staged this whole circus. It was you! You slipped it in secretly when I wasn't looking." His obstinacy made even the police officers shake their heads, weary. The lead officer closed his folder and looked at Travante with glacial coldness. "Mr. Travante, your statement and the forensic results present many contradictions. We need you to accompany us to the station to clarify some matters. Furthermore, we will request the recordings from your car's dashcam and the security cameras in your home kitchen to verify the preparation process you described." Hearing the word cameras, Travante jolted as if he had received an electric shock. I knew perfectly well we had a camera in the living room that pointed directly at the kitchen, and his luxury sedan had a camera recording all his trips. Those were the proofs that wouldn't lie. If he really added the drug to the stew, he undoubtedly would have left some trace. Travante's gaze wavered violently. His initial confidence had vanished completely, giving way to the naked fear of a criminal before the bench. He knew the trap he had set for his wife was now closing around his own neck. I stood up, straightened my clothes, and looked at my despicable husband for the last time before they took him away. "Travante, you once said this stew was full of your love. Now I understand that your love actually smells like poison. Luckily, fate wanted our child not to share the same luck as that poor baby." I left him standing there in the middle of the cold hospital hallway and walked away without looking back, silently thanking life for giving me a chance to survive and seek justice for myself and for the child I carried in my womb. Leaving the hospital, I didn't go home. I took a cab straight to the office. The sky was gray and leaden, with dark clouds swirling like an omen of a great storm, an exact reflection of my turbulent state of mind. Entering the building lobby, I felt curious stares and heard the whispers of the employees. The news of Calicia's poisoning had spread like a virus. Rumors were of all kinds, but the most malicious was that of the jealous boss who, finding out her secretary was pregnant by her husband, had tried to poison her to teach her a lesson. Hearing those inventions hurt like knives, but I knew I couldn't break down now. I had to be strong, stand firm to discover the truth, and clear my name. I went directly to my office and slammed the door, isolating myself from the gossip outside. Shortly after, someone knocked gently. It was Imani, my trusted assistant who had been with me since the beginning of my career. She walked in with a worried face, but a look full of determination. She placed a flash drive on my desk and whispered, "Zendaya, I did what you asked. I pulled all the security camera footage from the building and the parking garage for this morning. I found something very strange." I plugged the drive into my computer, and black and white images appeared on the screen. Imani pointed to the timestamp. "Look, Mr. Travante's car entered the garage at 7:15 a.m., but he didn't get out of the elevator to come to your office until 8:15. Normally it takes less than 5 minutes from the garage to here. Where was he during that hour? What did he do?" Imani's question froze my blood. An hour missing, more than enough time to carry out any dark plan. I looked closely at the screen, searching for more clues. Imani advanced the video to a recording from another camera in the basement emergency stairwell area. "And look at this. Pay close attention to this person." On the screen appeared the silhouette of a man in a white shirt and a mask walking in a hurry. He was carrying a fairly large black trash bag and was heading stealthily from the elevator area toward the dumpster area behind the building, instead of using the floor's trash cans. "It's DeAndre!" I exclaimed, instantly recognizing his slightly hunched walk and characteristic hairstyle. DeAndre was Travante's personal assistant and distant cousin, a man who followed his orders like a faithful dog. Why did he have to go down to throw trash away secretly via the emergency stairs at that hour? And what did that black bag contain? Was it the medicine packaging, gloves, evidence of the crime Travante wanted to make disappear after preparing his deadly stew during that lost hour? Imani looked at me with a firm voice. "I suspect there's important evidence in that trash bag. I sent someone to check the dumpster area, but the garbage truck just passed half an hour ago. However, I know DeAndre is cautious, but also very cheap. He doesn't usually throw important things into common trash immediately. He often hides them to get rid of them later. I'll send someone to follow him closely." I nodded, squeezing Imani's hand. "Thank you, Imani. Right now, I can only trust you. Be careful. They're cornered and could become very dangerous." Imani left, leaving me alone in the vastness of my office. I looked out the window. Rain was starting to fall hard, hitting the glass. Travante's web of lies and his accomplices were starting to show mortal cracks. That lost hour and DeAndre's suspicious action were the key to turning the tables. The rain outside showed no signs of letting up. Heavy drops pounded the glass, creating long trails of water like indelible scars. Sitting in my office, the light from the computer monitor illuminated my tired face, but my eyes burned with determination. Imani, my smart and efficient assistant, had just placed a thin dossier in front of me, though its weight was immense. She spoke in a low voice with a tone of indignation on my behalf. "Zendaya, look at this. I asked a contact in the building administration to check it out. The luxury apartment where Calicia lives isn't rented by her. It's in the name of a commercial services company." I picked up the paper. The name D&D Management LLC jumped out at me. It sounded pompous, but I knew it was just an empty shell. The legal representative of that company was precisely DeAndre, Travante's assistant and distant cousin. Imani continued her analysis, pointing to the attached bank statements. "The monthly rent is $20,500 plus high HOA fees, all transferred punctually from the account of D&D Management. But the funds arriving in that company come from a slush fund Mr. Travante created under the concept of representation expenses." I smiled bitterly, a smile that reached my soul. $2,500 a month for rent, not counting living expenses and shopping. Meanwhile, the dress I was wearing was 3 years old and worn. The purse I used was a modest brand worth barely $50. Travante always complained about the company's difficulties, asking us to tighten our belts to secure our future. Turns out the future he was worried about wasn't our families, but the luxurious love nest of his little mistress. I turned to the next page and found a photograph taken secretly of Calicia entering an elegant private clinic. The photo was from 2 weeks ago. Imani explained, "She went for an OB/GYN checkup. That meant Calicia knew perfectly well she was carrying Travante's child. She wasn't as innocent as she appeared. She was using that pregnancy as a strategic card to force Travante to make a decision." I looked at Calicia's young, smooth face in the photo and felt a chill. Behind that naive appearance hid a calculated veteran. She wanted to become the lady of the house in one fell swoop, destroy my happiness to build her own castle. But she didn't count on the man she had chosen as her pillar being a cold-blooded being, willing to cruelly dispose of his own son to protect his interests. The phone on the table vibrated suddenly, breaking the silence. The screen showed "My Love," a name I hadn't changed yet, and which now sounded terribly ironic. I took a deep breath. I put my hand to my chest to calm my racing heart and answered. On the other end sounded Travante's deep, familiar voice, but now I only heard a falseness that turned my stomach. "Baby, where are you?" "I just got out of the precinct. I'm exhausted. They asked me 1,000 things. My head hurts." I contained the rage and faked a trembling, worried voice. "I'm at the office. I'm so scared, Travante. Everyone is whispering. I don't dare go home. Are you okay? Did the police give you trouble?" Travante sighed theatrically on the other end, playing the role of the aggrieved husband. "What are they gonna do to me? He who has nothing to hide fears nothing. I'm just worried about you. I don't want you thinking crazy things and having it affect your health. Stay calm there, or go to your mother's house to rest. Don't listen to the rumors. I'll fix everything." Hearing those empty words of concern, I wanted to scream in his face that I knew everything. But reason stopped me. I needed him to be confident, to think I was still the naive little lamb so he would make more mistakes. I responded softly, "Of course I trust you. Get some rest. I'll come back a little later tonight. I have to finish a couple of pending things." I hung up and looked at the curtain of rain behind the window. Travante, you think you control the game? You're wrong. Night fell, and the city lit up with a vibrant glow, but that shine couldn't hide the dark corners of the human heart. I received a message from the private driver I had sent secretly, informing me that Kalicia's mother, Mama Hattie, had already arrived at the bus station. She had taken the first Greyhound from her small town in rural Alabama as soon as she heard her daughter had suffered an accident. I instructed the driver to take her to a modest but clean hotel near the hospital, and I emphasized not to take her to see her daughter yet, as visiting hours were over. It was better for her to rest after the long trip. I arrived at the hotel past 9 p.m. As soon as I entered the lobby, I recognized Mama Hattie. She was sitting, huddled on a sofa, a petite and thin figure in a simple brown dress. She wore worn-out sneakers, and next to her were 2 large cloth bags filled to the brim. Surely they were fresh produce, collard greens, maybe sweet potatoes. Humble gifts a poor mother had brought with effort for her daughter. The image moved me, reminding me of my own grandmother down south, just as hard-working, sacrificing everything for her kin. Seeing me approach, Mama Hattie stood up nervously, clasping her hands, cracked and weathered by work. I smiled, took her hand, and said kindly, "You're Kalicia's mother, right? I'm Zendaya, Kalicia's boss at the company. I knew you were coming and wanted to make sure you were okay, that you had eaten and had a place to rest." Mama Hattie's eyes filled with tears, and her voice, thick with a heavy southern accent, trembled. You're my Kalicia's boss? Lord bless my soul. You are very good, child. I don't know what foolishness she must have done to end up like this. At home, she's a very good, hard-working girl, you know. I helped her sit down and poured her a glass of water. Seeing the love and pride in her eyes when talking about her daughter, I felt a knot in my stomach. She didn't know her good and hard-working daughter lived in a luxury apartment that she, working her whole life, couldn't even dream of, that she used designer bags whose value equaled her entire fortune. I asked gently, "Does Miss Kalicia call you often? Does she tell you things about her life or work?" Mama Hattie responded with sincerity, "Of course she does, calls me all the time. Says they treat her real good at the company, that the pay is good, and she lives in a free company dormitory that's real nice. Every month she sends me $100 for my medicine and tells me not to worry, that she wants for nothing." Hearing this, I couldn't help but sigh. $100 for her mother, but willing to spend thousands on a whim to please her lover. How fragile and false was that filial devotion. I decided Mama Hattie had to see the truth, even though I knew it would be cruel for her. I feigned surprise. "Oh? She told you she lived in a dormitory? I thought Kalicia had rented a luxury apartment in Buckhead. That's a very expensive area. Rent for 1 month there equals a year of a worker's salary, and I see her often with designer things. The other day she was carrying a purse that I heard costs almost $2,000. Mama Hattie froze. Her cloudy eyes opened wide, full of confusion. "What? What are you saying? $2,000 for a purse? That can't be. My girl is very thrifty. She hates throwing away even a torn shirt, and she told me she lived in the company dorm." I patted the back of her hand gently and lowered my voice in a tone full of insinuation. "Surely Kalicia didn't want to worry you, and that's why she didn't tell you the truth. But you rest easy. Tomorrow I'll take you to the hospital and you can talk to her to clear everything up. I just worry that being so young and pretty in a city full of temptations, someone might take advantage of her and ruin her life." My words planted a seed of doubt in that mother's heart. Mama Hattie sat absorbed, staring into the void, while her trembling hands played with the hem of her dress. She was starting to realize her little girl had become a stranger, hiding terrible secrets. I left the hotel with a heavy heart. I didn't want to hurt her, but she was the most important witness, the only person who could wake up Kalicia's conscience, and, at the same time, the leverage I needed to unmask Travante. In this war, everyone would get hurt, even the most innocent. The next morning, just as I was leaving the garage to go to the office, a figure blocked my path. I slammed on the brakes with my heart in my throat. Looking closely, I saw it was DeAndre. He was there, looking furtive, glancing around as if fearing someone would see him. He tapped gently on my car window, signaling me to talk to him. I rolled down the window just enough to hear him, keeping a safe distance. "Mrs. Zendaya, can I have a minute? I have something very important Mr. Travante asked me to hand-deliver to you." His voice was a trembling whisper. I smiled with disdain and unlocked the door just enough for him to slip into the passenger seat. In the confined space of the car, I perceived a sour smell of sweat and stale tobacco emanating from him. He was clearly very nervous. He pulled a thin file from his jacket, left it on my lap, and withdrew his hand as if burned. "What is this?" I asked with a cold voice, without even looking at him. It's an old medical record of Miss Kalisha that Mr. Travante found this morning," DeAndre stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "Inside here, right here, is a receipt for the purchase of a medication, an abortifacient she bought yesterday at a shady pharmacy. The boss says, take this and give it discreetly to the police, saying you found it by chance in a drawer of Kalisha's desk. That way Mr. Travante will be free of suspicion and you won't be implicated either." I took the file and opened it slowly. Inside was a superficial medical report and a crumpled receipt. I held the receipt up to the light. The handwriting was a scribble specifying the name of the drug, misoprostol. The purchase date was from the previous afternoon, but the most ridiculous thing was that the ink on the receipt was fresh and the paper pristine, without a single wrinkle. It was evident this was a fake invoice made in a hurry the night before. "Burning the evidence in my hands," I murmured, before turning and fixing him with a stare so sharp he shrank back. "You and Travante think I'm stupid. The ink on this receipt hasn't even dried. You're asking me to give this to the police? That's like asking me to confess I falsified evidence. Or maybe what y'all want is to blame Kalisha for buying the drug and committing suicide out of depression, so Travante walks clean, and I take the blame for knowing and not stopping it." DeAndre paled. His lips trembled uncontrollably. "No, it's not that, ma'am. The boss said if you just handed it over, everything would be solved. You're his wife, you have to help him. If something happens to him, the company will sink, and you'll lose everything." He was trying to play the card of fear regarding losing my assets and status. But he was wrong. This wealth was the blood, sweat, and tears of my parents. I preferred to destroy it and start from scratch than leave it in the hands of a murderer. I threw the file back at him with a firm voice. "Take this trash and get out of my car right now, and tell Travante if he wants to stage a play, hire more professional actors. And you, DeAndre, you're being an accomplice to a murderer. You better worry about your own skin, lest you regret it when you're already in jail." DeAndre gathered the file in a hurry, opened the door, and ran out like a soul chased by the devil. Watching his pathetic figure disappear behind a concrete pillar, I knew Travante was desperate. He was drowning in the mud he himself had created, and the more he struggled, the tighter the noose got. This clumsy farce not only wouldn't save him, but was also further proof of the cruelty and baseness of a despicable husband and boss. Back in my office, I called Imani immediately. The atmosphere in the office had become as tense as a command post in the middle of battle. Imani placed her laptop on the desk, face lit up with the excitement of someone who just found treasure. "Zendaya, just as you suspected, I reviewed all of Travante and DeAndre's call logs from the last week. There's an unknown number that appears with alarming frequency, especially the night before the incident. I investigated and found out who it belongs to. You're not going to believe it. It's Soraya." "Soraya." I searched the name in my memory. Imani added quickly, "Soraya was Travante's classmate in college. Now she's a pharmacist and works as a rep for a big lab. According to some old girls from HR, she had a fling with Travante back in the day, but they broke up when he married you. I didn't imagine they had reconnected. A pharmacist, an ex-girlfriend, and secret calls at night." All the loose pieces started fitting into a complete picture. Travante couldn't buy that restricted drug himself for fear of being discovered, so he turned to Soraya. Maybe he cajoled her with promises of money, or rekindled old feelings to convince her to help. "Did you find any proof they met?" I asked, heart beating 1,000 miles an hour. Imani nodded. Her fingers slid quickly across the keyboard. "Here it is. I hired a private investigator to pull security footage from the area near DeAndre's fake company. Look at this corner of the screen." On the monitor appeared a black and white video of somewhat blurry quality, but sufficient to recognize the people. A family car stopped in a discreet corner. DeAndre got out and looked around. Shortly after, a tall woman with sunglasses approached. It was Soraya. She handed DeAndre a small package wrapped in newspaper. He took it, pocketed it quickly, and both separated in a hurry. The date and time on the camera corresponded to the afternoon before the incident. "A small package wrapped in newspaper," I murmured, without taking my eyes off the screen. "That's the poison. Soraya is the one who provided the weapon to Travante." I turned to Imani with a steady gaze. "Imani, this is the weakest link in their chain. Soraya has an education, a stable job. She could do this for money or love, but I'm sure she's not a professional criminal. She'll be terrified if she finds out she runs the risk of going to jail for complicity in attempted murder." Imani caught my drift instantly. "You mean we're going to pressure Soraya psychologically?" I nodded with an icy smile. "Exactly. Travante is trying to blame Calicia, and it's very likely he also has a plan to blame Soraya if everything comes to light. He'll say she gave him the drug on her own or tricked him saying it was a vitamin supplement. We have to get ahead of him. I'll meet with Soraya and show her the dark future Travante has prepared for her. Between going to jail for her old flame or testifying to get leniency, I trust Soraya is smart enough to know which path to choose." The net was cast, and the most important prey had been located. I knew the imminent meeting with Soraya would be a game of mental chess, but I held the aces Travante couldn't even imagine. The raw and brutal truth was about to come to light, and those who sow the wind will inevitably reap the whirlwind. The next morning, the sky was still covered by a gray blanket, as if about to unleash another storm over the city. I picked up Mama Hattie from the hotel and took her to the hospital to see her daughter. The elderly woman from the country still carried her old red plastic basket filled with yard eggs and fresh vegetables from her garden. "My Calicia loves eggs from our chickens at home," she told me. "Says the city ones smell fishy and ain't as tasty." Listening to her shrank my heart. A mother's love is immense like the ocean, but her daughter had traded that love for the vanity and luxury of the city. Entering the hospital room, the intense smell of disinfectant made Mama Hattie wrinkle her nose and hesitate before entering. Calicia had been moved to a regular room. She lay in the white bed, pale and gaunt like a withered leaf. Seeing her mother, her eyes snapped open, and her dry lips barely managed to pronounce a weak, "Mama." Mama Hattie ran to the bed, left the basket on the floor, and grabbed her daughter's freezing hand while tears ran down her face. "My child, how did you end up like this? Why did this happen to you?" Calicia turned her head, avoiding her mother's gaze, while tears of bitterness rolled down her cheeks. But Mama Hattie, with the instinct of a mother who has counted every penny, fixed her gaze on the bedside table. There, Calicia's expensive designer bag rested next to a latest generation smartphone. The contrast between those luxury objects, the old basket on the floor, and her mother's worn clothes created a suffocating atmosphere. Mama Hattie pointed at the purse with a trembling finger, voice cracking. "That purse! Mrs. Zendaya told me it cost $2,000. Where did you get the money to buy it? With what you earn, you barely make enough to send me a little something. How dare you waste money like that?" Calicia, terrified, looked at me and then turned to her mother, denying everything. "It's not true, Mama. Zendaya is wrong. It's a knockoff. It cost me $20 at the flea market. Don't listen to what people say." I was standing, leaning against the door, observing that clumsy performance in silence. I approached the bed slowly, put a hand on Calicia's shoulder, and whispered in her ear with a low voice, but loaded with enough threat to instill atrocious fear. "You think Travante is coming to see you? He's too busy trying to prove to the police that you were the one who bought the medicine. Whether this bag is real or fake, You and he know better than anyone. Stop lying to your mother." Kalisha froze, looking at me with eyes wide with panic. Fear took over her. She understood that I knew everything, and more importantly, that the man she had entrusted her life to was abandoning her like a useless object. Mama Hattie, seeing her daughter tremble, thought it was from pain and started massaging her hands, whispering words of comfort. Seeing the scene, I felt no satisfaction, only deep sadness. The raw truth would have to come out sooner or later, and the person who would suffer most wouldn't be the guilty one, but the innocent mother who loved her daughter with all her heart. I sat in a chair apart, pretending to look at my phone to give them space, but in reality observing every change in Kalisia's mood. Before sitting, I deliberately left the file DeAndre had given me that morning on the bedside table next to Kalisia's purse. I left it slightly open so a corner of the fake receipt for the misoprostol purchase was visible. I knew Kalisia's curiosity, and above all, I knew that in her state of anxiety, any clue related to Travante would be a burning nail to hold on to. And so it was. As soon as Mama Hattie turned around to pour water, Kalisha eyed the dossier secretly, grabbed it, and scanned it quickly. I saw her thin shoulders shake upon seeing the receipt with her name. Her face went from pale to wax white. She recognized the handwriting, the name of the drug, and most importantly, the dark intention behind that piece of paper. Travante, the man who had promised her a future, was now falsifying evidence to make her the murderer of his own child. Blind faith collapsed in an instant, leaving behind an abyss of despair. At that moment, the door opened and the doctor entered with a nurse. He reviewed the chart and looked at Kalisha with compassion. The atmosphere became heavy. The doctor sighed and announced in a grave voice, "The family must prepare. Due to the overdose that caused severe contractions and prolonged hemorrhaging, the uterus has suffered severe damage. We have done everything possible, but her ability to be a mother in the future is practically nil." The news fell like a lightning bolt. Mama Hattie collapsed to the floor, crying inconsolably. "Lord Jesus, no. My daughter is so young. Why is heaven so cruel to her?" The old woman's crying was a heartbreaking wail. Kalisha, motionless in bed, stared at the ceiling with empty eyes, not shedding a tear. The pain had exceeded her capacity to feel. No child, no possibility of being a mother, betrayed by her lover. Everything had collapsed at once, destroying her life. I approached to help lift Mama Hattie, heart shrinking. I looked at Kalisha and saw in her empty eyes the remains of her broken dreams. I leaned toward her again and whispered with a cold voice full of bitterness. "You see? This is the price of stealing another woman's husband. The price of those luxury bags is very high. Not only has he snatched your child, but also your future as a mother. Do you still want to protect him?" Kalisha turned her head and looked at me. Her lips moved, and in her eyes shone a deep hatred. I left the hospital with my soul in suspense and drove to the place I had agreed upon with Soraya. It was a discreet coffee shop in an alley, elegantly decorated and, most importantly, equipped with a security camera system that recorded every corner clearly. I chose a table in a corner from where I could see the entrance without losing privacy. I stirred my orange juice, trying to calm my mind before the storm that was approaching. At the agreed time, Soraya appeared. She entered with the sophisticated and haughty air of a successful woman. She wore a wine-colored silk dress that accentuated her skin and figure, a designer bag, and sunglasses covering half her face. She inspected the place and stopped upon seeing me. A half-smile of contempt was drawn on her lips. She approached, sat in front of me with arrogance, and took off her glasses, revealing eyes sharp and made up with care. "Hello, Zendaya," she said with a sweet but sharp voice. "I didn't expect the model wife to summon her husband's ex to a place like this. What are you looking for me for? Need advice on how to keep a man? Although it's curious. How do you keep him so bored that he has to come vent to me?" Her words were a deliberate provocation, an attempt to hurt me to see my reaction. In another time, perhaps I would have been enraged or burst into tears, but the Zendaya of today had suffered too much to let cheap jabs affect her. I looked at her calmly and smiled slightly. Soraya, I haven't called you to make a scene of jealousy or fight for a cheating man. A man like Travante, I gift him to you if you want. I'm here to save you from an imminent disaster before you become a criminal. Soraya let out a laugh that resonated in the silence of the shop. You save me? That's a joke. What do you need to save me from? I have money, a career, freedom. Worry about yourself. Without arguing, I took out my phone and opened the photo the detective had obtained from the security camera. I slid it across the table, voice hardened. Look closely at this. The day before yesterday afternoon, in an alley near DeAndre's office, you met with him. The little package wrapped in newspaper you gave him, what was in it? Vitamins or misoprostol? Soraya's smile vanished instantly. She picked up the phone and stared at the photo with trembling hands. Her face changed color, and not even the thick layer of makeup could hide the panic in her eyes. The cigarette she was about to light fell onto the table. She looked up, voice breaking, having lost all confidence. Where did you get this? I was just giving DeAndre some documents. Don't accuse me falsely. I looked her directly in the eyes. Documents that need to be wrapped in newspaper and delivered secretly? Soraya, I know you're a pharmacist. You know better than anyone the regulations on restricted drugs. The police aren't stupid. As soon as they trace the origin of that batch, do you think you'll be able to escape? Soraya sank into her seat. Her initial arrogance had vanished, leaving only a terrified woman on the edge of the abyss. She knew I had her. It was time to deliver the coup de grace. I leaned back in my chair and lowered my voice to a tone that was both a threat and an offer. Soraya, do you think Travante will protect you? This morning, he ordered DeAndre to falsify evidence to blame Kalisha. If the police get to him, what do you think he'll declare? He'll say that you, jealous and spurned, tricked him into buying poison to hurt his wife. Soraya shuddered, eyes wide with horror. She knew Travante's selfish nature too well. I continued my psychological attack. You have money, beauty, a brilliant future. Do you want to exchange all that for a sentence for complicity in attempted murder? How much did Travante promise you? 50,000? 100,000? Do you think that money will buy your freedom or dignity when you get out of jail with a criminal record? Every question was a hammer blow to her mind. She covered her face and broke down crying, shoulders shaking with sobs. Her facade had collapsed, exposing her weakness and late regret. I don't want to go to jail, she sobbed. I just thought it was a normal abortion pill. Travante told me his wife, meaning you, was pregnant by another man, and he wanted to get rid of the baby to get a divorce. I just wanted to help him and make some money. I smiled bitterly. For them, a child's life was nothing more than a means to an end. I leaned toward her. Now is not the time to cry. You only have one way out. Give me the proof that Travante ordered it. The messages, the recordings of the calls. I will hand it to the police and ensure they understand you were deceived and used. You will become a witness, receive leniency, and have a chance to start over. Either you go to jail with Travante or you save yourself. You choose. Soraya looked up, debating between fear and fragile hope. She bit her lip until it bled in an internal struggle that seemed to last an eternity. Finally, the instinct for survival won. She opened her designer bag, took out a small silver flash drive, and pushed it toward me as if it were burning coal. Here, everything is here, she said with a hoarse voice. Recordings of his calls asking for the drug, messages with the deposit transfer, even his promises that he would leave you to come back to me. Take it, please. Don't let me go to jail. I grabbed the flash drive and squeezed it in my hand. It was cold, but it contained enough fire to incinerate Travante's career and life. I stood up and looked at Soraya one last time with a mix of pity and warning. You chose well. Keep your mouth shut and wait to hear from me. And don't you even think about warning Travante, or you'll lose your last chance. The small flash drive in my hand weighed a ton. I knew it didn't just contain data, but the death sentence of my marriage. I didn't dare go home or stay at the office, so I drove to a friend detective's office, a place with the best soundproofing to face the truth. The room was dark, only lit by the bluish light of the computer monitor. The hum of the fan made me nervous. Inserting the flash drive, my hands shook so much I failed twice. A folder appeared with audio files and screenshots of messages, meticulously organized by date by Soraya. It was evident she had also prepared in case Travante betrayed her. I clicked on the most recent recording from 3 days ago. My husband's voice, familiar and chilling, sounded through the speakers. It sounded cold and authoritative, very different from his usual serene tone. "Soraya, see what you can find. I need something strong, preferably colorless and odorless to mix with food. My wife is nauseous. I want it to look like a spontaneous miscarriage, clean, so I can kick her out of the house without splitting the assets. That pregnancy is an obstacle, understand?" Every word was like a poisoned needle stabbing my ears and piercing my heart. I covered my mouth to keep from sobbing while hot tears rolled down my cheeks and fell onto my freezing hands. So the original target of that stew was me and the baby growing inside me. He didn't want to take care of me. He wanted to kill his own child just to protect the wealth he craved to hoard. That Kalisha ate it was an accident, an irony of fate that saved my life and my baby's. Then I listened to the recording of the call between Travante and Soraya after Kalisha was hospitalized. Travante's voice was full of panic and cruelty. "Shut your mouth and don't say stupid things. Blame it all on Kalisha. Say she bought the medicine herself. I'll handle the police. If you think about saying anything about me, you'll regret it. Remember, if I go down, you won't live peacefully either." The blatant threat and lack of responsibility produced deep disgust in me. The man I loved, with whom I shared my life for 3 years, was a demon disguised as a human, willing to sacrifice his mistress and an old friend to save his position and fake honor. I copied all data to 3 different devices. I sent a copy to a secret email, another to my lawyer, and kept the original in my purse. I stared at the dark computer screen, put my hand on my belly, and whispered to my baby, "Sweetheart, forgive me for choosing your father poorly, but don't worry, I won't let anyone hurt you ever again. Tomorrow I will make the guilty pay for every one of our tears." My pain transformed into a cold, hard hatred. I knew there was no turning back, and I didn't want there to be. At the company, tension was palpable in the air. Employees walked on tiptoes, whispering about the scandal. Sitting in my office, my eyes were fixed on the computer screen, showing images from a hidden security camera Imani had installed in the accounting department. DeAndre was there, pacing like a caged animal, shirt soaked in sweat. He was trying to access the accounting system to erase the traces of money transfers. He knew the financial crimes unit could arrive at any moment, and those transfers to Soraya's account and his shell company would be irrefutable proof. However, DeAndre didn't know that Imani and my team of trusted IT guys had taken control of the system the night before. Every attempt to delete data was blocked, and the system saved a backup and sent me an alert. I saw the desperation on DeAndre's face when the screen showed "access denied" in red letters. He punched the keyboard, pulled his hair, and called someone on the phone. I put on my headphones. I activated the hidden microphone I had installed under Travante's desk months ago when I started suspecting his fidelity. DeAndre's voice sounded trembling and scared. "Travante, I'm lost. The system won't let me delete the data. Looks like someone locked my admin access. What do I do? If the police check the books, I'm finished." On the other end, Travante's voice roared like a wounded beast. "Useless. I told you to do it carefully. Now listen to me. Find a way to blame Kalisha, falsify evidence, create fake emails saying she suffered severe depression and wanted to commit suicide. You have to make people believe she was crazy, understand?" "But Travante, she just lost her child. Doing that would be very cruel," DeAndre protested weakly. Travante let out a frozen laugh that made me shudder. "Cruelty or jail? Choose. If you don't do it, I assure you, you'll end up in prison next to Soraya. Move!" The call ended, leaving a terrifying silence. DeAndre collapsed in his chair, covering his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. I took off the headphones, feeling absolute contempt. Even at the last moment, Trevante showed no remorse. He kept trying to trample on others' pain to save himself, wanting to turn Calicia, the victim of his betrayal, into a suicidal madwoman. The news that Trevante and DeAndre were spreading the rumor that Calicia had tried to commit suicide out of depression spread quickly through the company and, of course, reached Mama Hattie's ears. The humble woman from the country who had spent her life working the land transformed into a lioness defending her cub. She burst into the company lobby at lunch hour when it was full of people. She wore her worn clothes and old sneakers, but her face reflected uncontainable fury. Crying and shouting with a voice broken by pain, she clamored, "Where is that wretched director? Come out here! You deceived my daughter, ruined her life, and now accuse her of wanting to kill herself. God sees everything, and your punishment is coming." The security guards tried to stop her, but no one dared be rough with an old woman suffering like that. The crowd gathered, whispering and recording with their phones. Trevante had no choice but to come out. He stepped out of his private elevator frowning, attempting to maintain a fake calm. He approached Mama Hattie and said in a low, threatening voice, "Ma'am, please calm down. Let's talk in my office. Don't make a scene here." Mama Hattie looked at him with bloodshot eyes and pointed her finger at him. "I ain't going nowhere. Whatever you gotta say it here so everyone can hear. You say my daughter wanted to kill herself? My child loves life. She was sending me money to fix up the house. Why would she want to die? It was you hypocrite, who drove her to this." Trevante paled and signaled DeAndre to bring a bulging envelope. He shoved it into Mama Hattie's hand and whispered, "Here's $5,000. Take it for your expenses and take her back to the country. Don't make things harder for me. I'm a victim here, too." From the mezzanine, I witnessed the whole scene with a shrinking heart. $5,000. Was that the price of dignity, health, and the future of a young woman? Mama Hattie opened the envelope. Seeing the bills, she let out a bitter laugh and suddenly threw them in Trevante's face. The bills flew through the air like dry leaves. "I'm poor, but I ain't selling my daughter's blood," she screamed with a wail that silenced the entire lobby. "Your money is dirty. I'm going to report you. I'll report you to the end, even if I have to sell my house to give my daughter her honor back." Trevante stood paralyzed in the rain of money, red with humiliation and rage. The crowd started pointing at him, casting looks of contempt. In that moment, I knew Trevante had lost. He could buy many things with money, but not the pride of a mother who loves her child. The image of those bills falling would be an indelible stain on his life. After the scandal at the company, I went home at dusk. The enormous house was dark, cold as a tomb. I found Trevante in the living room, sitting on the sofa with a glass of whiskey in hand, staring into the void. Seeing me arrive, he didn't lift his head. "You're back," he said with a hoarse voice. "Quite a show today at the office." "No. You must be satisfied seeing me humiliated by an old country woman in front of all the employees." I turned on the light. His face was gaunt and pale. I left my purse on the table and responded calmly. "I'm not satisfied. I'm sad. Sad that you let things go this far. Why did you give her money? That's like admitting your guilt." Trevante let out a bitter laugh and downed the whiskey in one gulp. "What do you know? In this world, what isn't fixed with money is fixed with a lot of money. That old woman is stupid, that's all." He went to the kitchen and returned with a glass of warm milk. He placed it in front of me, and his voice became strangely soft. "Forget the office. Drink. This will be good for you. I've noticed you looking very thin lately. I worry about you. It's imported milk, very good for pregnant women. Well, for women." The word pregnant froze my heart. Was he testing me or trying to poison me again? I looked at the steaming glass of milk as if it were a cup of venom. I picked it up, feeling the heat in my hands, and looked him directly in the eyes. "Travante, remember the Chitlins the other day? You also said they were to take care of me, and Kalisha almost died. This glass of milk. Are you sure it only has milk?" His face changed. The smile vanished. He stepped back with a wavering gaze. "What? What are you saying? You suspect me? I'm your husband." I smiled bitterly, stood up, and walked with the glass toward a potted plant in the corner of the room. Slowly, I poured all the milk into the soil under Travante's stunned gaze. "I don't suspect you," I said with an icy voice. "I just fear it might agree with me as badly as it did Kalisha. The plant needs nutrients, too. Let's see if it's still alive tomorrow." The sound of the glass hitting the table was dry and resounding. Travante stared at me. In his eyes, there was no longer falseness, but pure terror. He knew. He knew I knew everything. The charade of the happy marriage was over. That would be the longest night of our lives, because at dawn, the real storm would unleash and sweep away the remains of our rotten marriage. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual and dressed with care in front of the mirror. Today wasn't just a shareholders' meeting, it was a funeral, the funeral of my 3-year marriage and the farewell to the traitors in my life. Entering the company, silence was almost absolute. Everyone seemed to feel the storm approaching. I went directly to the large boardroom, where the shareholders and the board of directors were already gathered. Travante presided over the table. His gray suit seemed too big for him, and dark circles betrayed his anxiety, though he tried to hide it by tapping a pen rhythmically on the table. Seeing me enter, his gaze flashed with suspicion, but he quickly looked away. He cleared his throat and signaled DeAndre to start the meeting. The main topic was the approval of an eco-resort project, a project Travante had presented as a golden opportunity, but which I knew was a cover to siphon funds from the company to his shell companies and empty the coffers before our divorce. DeAndre presented the project with a trembling voice, sweating despite the air conditioning. Shareholders whispered. Some frowned at the implausible figures. When the time came to vote, Travante stood up, trying to sound firm. "Gentlemen, this is a unique opportunity. I propose you trust the vision of this board and approve the resolution." Just as he was about to raise his hand to vote, I stood up slowly. The sound of my chair scraping the floor caught everyone's attention. I looked at Travante steadily and said with a calm but glacial voice, "One moment, Mr. CEO, fellow shareholders. Before talking about how to spend the company's money, I think we should talk about the moral integrity and legal capacity of the person managing it." Travante slammed the table. "Zendaya, this is a strategic meeting, not a schoolyard to air your personal problems." I didn't flinch. Travante, having an affair and a child outside of marriage is a personal matter. But using company money to maintain your mistress, creating shell companies to launder capital, and, what is gravest, buying illegal substances to harm others, that is a legal matter that concerns the survival of this company. The shareholders present here have the right to know if their money is in the hands of a CEO or an alleged criminal. The room erupted in a murmur of astonishment. Travante, pale, pointed at me trembling, unable to articulate a word. Before he could react, I signaled Imani to connect my laptop to the projector. The big screen behind Travante lit up. First, the bank statements showing transfers to Kalisha's accounts and DeAndre's company, figures of hundreds of thousands of dollars highlighted in red. Then the screenshots of messages between Travante and DeAndre. The shareholders, even those who supported him before, shook their heads with looks of disappointment and anger. "This is just preliminary proof of embezzlement," I said, "and the most terrible part is yet to come." I clicked on the audio file Soraya had given me. The room fell into sepulchral silence. Travante's unmistakable voice resonated cruel and cold. "I want it to look like a spontaneous miscarriage. Clean. That pregnancy is an obstacle. Get me something strong." Every word was like an echo from hell. Some female shareholders covered their mouths, horrified. Travante, crazed, tried to rip the projector cable out, screaming it was a setup. "Turn it off! It's fake! This woman manipulated my voice!" But Imani and 2 security guards I had prepared stopped him. Travante struggled, desperate and pathetic. He turned toward DeAndre looking for help, but he had hidden under the table, shaking. I approached Travante. "You say it's fake? And what about the toxicological analysis of the stew you prepared with your own hands? And the statement from Soraya, your ex, whom you used to get the drug? No one set a trap for you, Travante. Your own greed and evil dug your grave." I turned to the shareholders. "Gentlemen, I have all the evidence and witnesses. I have already sent copies to the police. I propose the immediate removal of Mr. Travante as CEO to facilitate the investigation and protect the reputation of this company." A timid applause started and quickly turned into an ovation. Travante slid down the wall to the floor, defeated. His career, his honor, everything had collapsed in a single morning. Just as the applause ceased, the doors to the room swung open. 2 officers from the police department entered, followed by Soraya, face hidden behind sunglasses, and my lawyer. Soraya's appearance was the coup de grace. Travante looked at her, incredulous. "Soraya, what are you doing here?" An officer approached Travante and said with a firm voice, "Travante Jenkins, you are under arrest for alleged assault and trafficking of harmful pharmaceutical substances." Meanwhile, another officer headed toward DeAndre, who was curled up in a corner. Seeing the police, DeAndre broke down crying, seized by panic. "I don't know anything. It was Travante. He forced me to do everything, to falsify the papers, to get rid of the evidence. I was just following orders. I'll confess everything. Please, leave me alone." DeAndre's quick and cowardly betrayal left Travante stunned. "You traitor," he hissed. But before he could say more, the metallic click of handcuffs silenced his words. The hands that had signed million-dollar contracts and caressed my hair were now trapped in cold metal rings. Passing by me, Travante stopped. "Zendaya, since when were you planning this? Why have you been so cruel? We were husband and wife." I looked at him, feeling nothing but an immense void. I approached and whispered in his ear, "Since you brought me that bowl of chitlins, since you tried to kill our child. Me, cruel? Compared to trying to poison your wife and child, sending you to jail is practically an act of mercy. Goodbye, ex-husband." Travante lowered his head and left the room with a hunched back, alone and pathetic. The door closed, but the echo of his arrest remained in everyone's mind. In the cold interrogation room at the precinct, Travante, gaunt and suit-wrinkled, faced irrefutable evidence. Soraya and DeAndre's statements, toxicological analyses, and audio recordings left no room for doubt. He crumbled, admitting buying the drug to hurt me and keep the assets. However, he insisted Calicia's case was an accident, that he didn't know she was pregnant. "I swear, I didn't know she was pregnant," he sobbed. "She told me she was on the pill. It was just a fling. I'm not stupid enough to let it have consequences. If I had known, I would have forced her to abort much sooner." His words were so cold and cruel that even the detective frowned. For Travante, a child's life was nothing more than a problem to be eliminated. The detective slid a report across the table. "You say you didn't know, but science doesn't lie. This is the result of the fetus analysis. It confirms 99.99% that it was your biological son. And by the way, it was a boy." Travante grabbed the paper, trembling. His eyes locked onto the words, "Paternity confirmed." "A boy. It was a boy," he murmured, before banging his head against the table and letting out a scream of animal pain. He cried, but not out of regret, but for the loss of the male heir he craved so much. His family had always looked down on women, and one of the reasons he hated me was because he assumed my baby would be a girl. Behind the one-way mirror, I watched it all, feeling a chill. Even at his lowest moment, he only thought of himself and his backward ideas. Human life, Even his own blood meant nothing to him. Fortunately, that poor child didn't have to be born to call a man like him father. I turned around and left, thanking heaven for protecting my daughter. Kalisha was discharged a week later. Doctors told her she had saved her life, but could never be a mother. Since her luxury apartment was sealed by the investigation, Mama Hattie had to take her to a damp, narrow rental room on the outskirts. Before they returned to the country, I went to visit them. The smell of mold hit me at the door. In the tiny room, Kalicia sat in a corner with messy hair and empty eyes, a shadow of the elegant woman she was. Mama Hattie was packing old clothes into a cloth bag. Seeing me, she wiped her tears. "Mrs. Zendaya, we're leaving. We don't want to bother you anymore. My daughter knows she did wrong." I looked at that woman bent by the weight of life and felt deep pity, a lifetime of sacrifices so her daughter would succeed. And the only thing she received in return was a daughter broken physically and spiritually. I left a thick envelope on a plastic table. Mama Hattie refused to take it. "No, please, that you didn't report her is already a blessing. This money weighs too much." I took her hands and put it in her palm. "Take it, please. It's not charity. It's her last paycheck, plus some help for the trip and medicines. Take care of her. Encourage her to start over. She has already paid a very high price for her mistake." Mama Hattie broke down crying. "How wretched I am. Why has my daughter had such bad luck? She let herself be fooled by a married man and now she's destroyed. How am I going to look the neighbors in the face?" Kalicia also started sobbing in her corner without daring to look at me. Regret and shame consumed her. "Kalicia," I said with a serious but calm voice, "you lost a child, and the ability to be a mother is the greatest pain for a woman. But let this serve as a lesson. Never build your happiness on the pain of others, and never believe beauty can buy lasting happiness. Live with dignity to honor your mother. Don't let her cry for you again." A taxi was waiting for them. Mama Hattie helped Kalicia out. Kalicia looked at the city one last time with eyes full of tears. The place that was once her promised land was now the setting of her worst nightmare. I watched them drive away, hoping the peace of the country would heal her wounds, though I knew the scars would remain forever. After Travante's arrest, the company was plunged into chaos. Employees were disoriented, partners suspicious, and stocks in free fall. As the majority shareholder and holder of key evidence, the board elected me interim CEO. My first measure was to fire Travante and DeAndre's entire trusted team. I wanted to clean the company of corruption and lead it with transparency and honesty. I organized a press conference, apologized publicly, and committed to floating the company. My sincerity and determination managed to restore part of the market's confidence. Seeing the financial charts starting to recover, I sighed relieved and whispered to my baby, "We did it, sweetheart. Your grandfather's legacy is safe." But the calm didn't last long. That afternoon, my mother-in-law, Mrs. Beatrice, burst into my office fuming, dressed in silks and jewelry. Her face was red with anger. "Viper! Evil woman! You put my son in jail to keep everything. My son is a good man. He is incapable of killing anyone. You set a trap for him." Calmly, I asked my secretary to leave and close the door. I looked at the woman I once called mother, now turned into a blind and cruel mother-in-law. I offered her a glass of water. "Calm down. You say your son is a good man? Good enough to buy poison to kill his own grandchild?" Mrs. Beatrice was left speechless, but insisted. "Don't slander him. He didn't know the other one was pregnant. It was a mistake. Men are like that. As his wife, you should have been more understanding. Not put him in jail. You have no heart." Her brazenness overwhelmed me. I grabbed my tablet and showed her the video of Travante's confession and the recordings with Soraya. I hit play. Her son's voice resonated clear and cruel. "I want it to look like a spontaneous miscarriage. That pregnancy is an obstacle." As she listened, Mrs. Beatrice's face decomposed. She saw her perfect son revealed as a monster. When the video ended, she collapsed on the sofa, trembling. She couldn't believe the son she bragged about so much was capable of such atrocity. "Do you see now?" I said, voice softer but firm. "That stew was for me. If I had eaten it, the grandchild I carry in my womb wouldn't be here anymore. Not only did he want to kill his secretary's child, but ours too, your grandchild. Do you still want to defend him?" Mrs. Beatrice looked at my belly and then at me. The truth was too brutal. She covered her mouth and broke down crying, a cry of shame and regret. She stood up wobbling and left without daring to look at me. I saw her hunched back and felt pity. She was also a mother, but her blind love and misguided upbringing had contributed to this tragedy. A week later, I received a summons from my lawyer to visit Travante in pretrial detention and finalize the divorce. With the lawsuit in hand, I crossed the cold doors of the jail. The air smelled of confinement and dampness. They took me to the visiting room, and I sat in front of a thick glass. Shortly after, they brought Travante. I barely recognized him. In just a few weeks, he had aged 10 years. Shaved head, sunken face, unkempt beard. His eyes, once bright, were now dull and full of fear. He wore a prisoner uniform that was too big. Seeing me, a glimmer of hope shone in his gaze. He leaned toward the intercom with a trembling voice. "Zendaya, did you come to see me? I knew you still love me. Drop the charges, please. I made a mistake. I swear I'll change. Think of our 3 years together. Think of our child. A boy needs his father." I looked at him with a calm heart. His pleas, which before would have moved me, now seemed ridiculous. He used our son as a shield, the same son he tried to kill. I slid the divorce papers and a pen through the slot. "Sign. The love ended the day you tried to poison me, and my son doesn't need a father who tried to kill his mother. You don't deserve to be a father." Travante grabbed the paper, trembling. He looked at the words, "divorce decree," and tears fell on the sheet. "Zendaya, please. I don't want to lose everything. I'll start from scratch. I'll make it up to you. Don't be so cruel." I interrupted him with a firm voice. "Stop acting. You're not crying out of regret, but for the life of luxury you lost. Sign now, or I'll have to use the evidence of embezzlement. Then it won't be 12 years, but 20. Hearing that, he stopped crying. He knew I wasn't joking. He grabbed the pen and signed with a handwriting shaky and crooked like his own life. I picked up the paper. Our marriage had ended with a signature in a cold visiting room. I stood up. "Rehabilitate yourself. I hope when you get out you learn to be a decent person. Goodbye forever." I turned around, leaving behind his weak and desperate screams. The iron door closed with a dull thud, separating two worlds, two destinies. I stepped out into the sunlight, blinding and bright. Finally, I was free. The trial was quick thanks to the solid evidence. Soraya, as a cooperating witness, received a 2-year suspended prison sentence, but the price was high. Her pharmacist license was revoked forever, and she was fired from her job. From a life of success and luxury, she went to unemployment and shame. She had to sell her condo and car to pay the fines. One night I received a long message from her full of apologies and laments. I read it without emotion and deleted it. Her regret meant nothing to me. I chose to forget her like a speck of dust that irritates your eye and then disappears. My mother-in-law, Mrs. Beatrice, didn't give up. She started slandering me, saying I was a harpy who had stolen everything from her son. I ignored her. One day, her lawyer came to my house demanding half my assets. I calmly reminded him of the prenup Travante had signed and the evidence of his embezzlement. I warned him if he kept harassing me, I would sue for defamation. The lawyer left with his tail between his legs. 6 months later, on a night of torrential rain, I went into labor. At the hospital, while pain tore through me, I remembered that other day in that same hallway. That day was of terror and death. Today was of hope and life. After a difficult labor, my baby's cry filled the room. "Congratulations, it's a girl. 7 pounds even, and she is beautiful," the midwife said. They put her on my chest. Tears of happiness welled up in my eyes. My daughter was here, safe and sound. I named her Serenity, a simple name that enclosed all my wishes for her, a life of peace. A thought shuddered through me. If that morning hadn't been for the nausea, this sacred moment would never have existed. Fate, sometimes cruel, sometimes miraculous, had taken a life to save another. The day of the sentencing, I didn't go to court. I watched the news at home with Serenity in my arms. Trevante was sentenced to 12 years in prison. On the screen, he looked like a broken man. I felt nothing seeing him. Neither joy nor pity, just immense relief. My past closed with the judge's gavel. 2 years later. The company under my direction was flourishing. I was in my office on the 20th floor, contemplating the city. Serenity turned into a 2-year-old whirlwind, ran into my arms. She was my engine, the cure for all my wounds. My phone rang. It was a message from Kendrick, a kind and respectful business partner who knew my story. "Hi, Zendaya, it's Kendrick. Do you and Serenity feel like an excursion this weekend? I know a beautiful spot in the country." I read the message and smiled. I looked at my daughter playing happily. Happiness isn't a destination, but a journey. I had suffered, but I hadn't closed my heart because of it. I replied, "Thanks, Kendrick. We'd love to." I sent the message and hugged Serenity. The sky was an intense blue, cloudless. The past had dissipated, giving way to the warm light of the present. After the storm, the sun always comes out. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.